first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. I can see, I could breathe. Jesus freed me, Jesus freed me, now I'm free. I got kicked out the house, but taking sugar out the house. Steady, they don't wanna set me. My doctor's on Sebi, my crisis on heavy. My dump is on Betty, my stomp is on Jetty. My dump is on Teddy, lightsaber like a jetty. Song like a Medi, bon song for the Fetty. When luck, popping the man to gain the world and lose a soul though. Popping the stand, I come in the throws, I get them all. No. This year I lost my best man and I lost my spouse. Only billionaire you know that's sleeping on the couch. What? This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. Let it rain, rain, rain. I need you on with the main. Let it rain, rain, rain. Home at my bomb in the game. What is they thinking the game? What is they looking to gain? Everything is in the future. I know it's just stopping and bumping the change, baby. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long. This the first time in a long time. This the first time in a long.
What is going on? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another Writer's Room. It has been too long. Space Junk, what's going on? Bosch, Tovar, Stevenson, all in the chat. Adam Almighty, Mysteries, Golden Spoon, Rhea Kaizen Cabello, straight from South Africa. I'm doing excellent. Good to see you all. Do you guys like my new green screen? It's pretty professional these days. We're back once again, and hopefully here to stay. That's the plan. The plan is to really be back on these. You know, I keep saying that, but I mean it. I mean it this time. I mean it this time. It is good to see you guys. It's good to see you guys in the chat. It's good to see you guys in the Discord. Eustace in the Discord. Sid, Noah, Josh, good to see you all here. So today, gonna hop in. How's the weather been treating you down there? CJ, the weather is all over the place. I'm gonna be honest. It is hot and cold and rainy and not rainy. It is back and forth, but we are here with my YouTube friends once again. John, good to see you. Tyler's doing a caricature of John. Always got some other YouTuber that I'm to recommend. Good to see you, John. Today I want to start off and talk about something. I'm actually releasing a video on this topic tomorrow, but this is something that I have been thinking about a lot, and it is the relationship between the ego and character desire, personal desire, and truth, and unconscious truth, these sorts of things. And so I want to hop into this a little bit today and discuss how this relates to you and how it relates to your characters and these sorts of things. So, we have talked a lot, and I have talked a lot about the idea of lie and truth, and how it is a very important part of the story, and how this relationship is where a character is essentially goes on a journey, discovers some sort of truth, and then is able to integrate that truth into themselves, and then they have an arc, right? And so the shedding of a lie is a character's arc, where they realize the truth about themselves, and they go through that arc. And let me make sure that my Discord friends can see this as well. And so, when that happens, what happens is that the lie is usually connected to the character's want. And this is really important, and this is where a lot of people get confused on what this means. And I'm going to be pretty philosophical today. I'm going to get pretty into the woo-woo sort of esoteric ideas here, because this is very important to understand, not only for a character and how a character goes through an arc, but also how a person goes through an arc and what that actually looks like. And so a lot of the times the character's lie is going to be based, or the character's goal, their desire, their want, their desire, their goal, these sorts of things, right? It is based on the lie that they believe. Why? Because what's happening is that they are essentially saying that there is something out there in the world, something out there that I need to go attain, something out there that I need to go build, that will give me completeness, right? And so the fundamental lie is that something out in the world will make me whole, right? Will make me lovable, will make me complete, will make me accepted, right? This is the most fundamental lie. And so what happens? The character goes out into the journey, they go out into the world, pursuing this want or the desire or the goal that is really just a band-aid for this lie, right? And they are covering up a belief in their mind that is creating incompletion. And what I mean by this is they are creating an ego. I'm sure you guys have heard this word and people go, oh, that's my ego, or that person is so egoic, this sort of thing. What is the ego? What does that actually mean? The ego is the mental sort of conscious stream of thoughts that you have in your mind and that you allow to define who you are, right? And so, for example, for me, a lot of my ego was connected to making it in Hollywood, trying to be a Hollywood screenwriter or a Hollywood director, or being seen as successful from that perspective. And so when you don't really live in the truth of who you are, and just that you are whole, that you do not need these external things to be loved, to be accepted, to be all of these things, you create this ego, and this ego tells you lies. It tells you what you are supposed to be, what you are supposed to look like, how you're supposed to act, all of these things. And this is why you have this idea of like a character's goal is an egoic desire of some kind, right? If they are living in a lie, where they believe that this thing out there in the world, it is going to satisfy them, it is going to bring them wholeness, and therefore they must go after that thing. And that thing is going to bring them this wholeness. And then a lot of times what you see with a character arc is they go out into that journey. So they start in their sort of normal village world, and they go out into the adventure. And many times you get this low point, right? Sometimes in traditional Hollywood films, you can find this strong midpoint where a character begins their arc. And sometimes it happens at the end of the film and you have a climactic big shift. But what happens is your character goes on this descent into the real world, seeking something. They believe that they are not whole. They believe that they must attain this thing. And then many times they get the thing that they wanted out in this journey. And then when they grasp it, they realize that this thing, this external thing that they were going after, that was supposed to make them worthy of love, that was supposed to make them whole, that was supposed to destroy the childhood trauma that they were carrying on with them, that thing didn't satisfy. It didn't make them complete. And by going on that external journey, they are allowed a moment of internal clarity. And that internal clarity helps them see, oh, wait, this thing that I thought was going to make me whole did not make me whole. So then What will make me whole? What is the answer? And that answer ends up being what they need. And what they need is a realization of the truth. And this truth, usually how this is working, is that you have conscious lies, right? Essentially egoic lies, ego lies, the narrative that plays in your mind, and tells you who you are and these sorts of things, and the labels that you give yourself. I'm a screenwriter, I'm a YouTuber, I'm this, I'm that, right? All of these, you analyzing the world and creating this separation between you and the world, and then you saying, I am this. And then you have the unconscious truth, right, down here. And so what happens is this is sort of its own kind of circle in a way. And you essentially, as you go on this external journey out of your normal situation and into the adventure world, you also go on this journey of tearing away your conscious lies and realizing the unconscious truths. And so what's interesting is, you see in the Buddhist philosophy, they have this idea that desire is suffering, right? You may have heard this, you may have not, but in Buddhism, there's this idea that desire is suffering. When you want something out in the world, what you are doing is you are telling yourself through your mental ego that I am not whole unless I gain this desire that is out there in the world. And that I must therefore go and get that desire, and therefore you are creating in your spirit, right, in your mind, in your internal essence, a lack. And you're saying, I am not whole, I must go get this thing. And therefore you create suffering, right? Because I am not seen in this way, because I am not famous, because I am not rich, because I am not well respected, because I am not high skilled, because I'm not all these things, therefore I am incomplete, and therefore I suffer. Because desire is suffering in that way. And so then your character, or you go on this journey out into the world to go and find that thing that will make you whole, and then you realize this thing did not make me whole, and that my wholeness was within me the entire time, and that it was my inability to love myself or my inability to love others that was making this illusion of separation between myself and between what I needed. And so for me, one of the things that I have kind of been going through over really the last few years, and part of the reason that I have struggled to be on YouTube regularly, has been because I placed so much of my ego in this idea of Hollywood success, or in this idea of being respected by others for being a professional, or being in the club or in the guild or in all of these things. And so therefore I went out. I left my village, I left my home, and I went out on my adventure to go and seek and to go and find the answers to make myself proud of myself and to make people respect me and all of these things. And I went out into Hollywood to search and find, and I found many things. And I found many truths about how Hollywood works and how the industry actually operates, and some things I might share on this channel and some things I might keep to myself, but there's a lot of darkness there, and it's not always what it is presented to be. Rarely is it what it is presented to be. And this created kind of this, and not only this, but in many areas of my life, I created a lot of chaos and created a lot of confusion. And this created this sort of low point for me. It created this midpoint, or this sort of dark climax, right? Out there in the wilderness, where the beliefs that I was holding, the lies that I was holding about myself and what my identity was supposed to be in and who I was supposed to be, these things were being shed. And the unconscious truth was welling up. And when I began to realize these things, it definitely was not an overnight switch, and it definitely does not mean that now I'm a totally whole person or anything like this. But I learned many things, and ultimately it forced me to return. It forced me to come back, having changed, being a different person, having let go of my egoic desire, having let go of the things that I thought were going to make me whole and complete, and returning and realizing certain truths. One of the, maybe the most important truth, and the one that is so simple and obvious, is about love, and about how life is not about being successful in a career. It is not about other people seeing you as cool or interesting or as this genuine artist or whatever your egoic desire might be. Life is about loving other people in its most simplest form. And then everything that we want to do on top of that, whether we want to be creative, whether we want to do interesting things, or, climb mountains or do things that are enjoyable and interesting, all of those things can be good. But that's not really the point of life, because the point of life is accessible to everyone at all times in the present moment. It's not something that you have to go out and egoically achieve through this sense of, oh, if I'm consistent in this and I become this person, or I get this deal, or I make this movie, then therefore I'm able to love myself, right? These are the lies that we tell ourselves. And so when you look at a story, you can see this in different ways. In Little Miss Sunshine, the reason I touch on that story so much is because its arc is so clear and so fundamental, because Richard, the father in that film, he has a very clear egoic desire and an egoic goal. He has this desire for people to see him as successful. He wants to be seen as successful. He's trying to sell his 12-step to success book as an unsuccessful person, right? And it's funny that this is something that now in the internet age, we see even, more than ever, right? People online trying to sell courses or trying to sell coaching programs and things. And they themselves are not successful in whatever that thing is that they're selling. And that's what he's doing in this film. And so then therefore his daughter in the film, his daughter is then given a lie because her father has the same lie. And in the same way, his daughter, Richard's daughter, Olive, wants to win the beauty pageant. Why? Ultimately, because she believes this will earn the love of her father, right? So what she wants in the film is her father's love. Or what she needs in the film, let's say, is her father's love. But what she wants in the film is to win the beauty pageant. This is why, and so now hopefully you can see that the want is attached to the lie, the need is attached to the truth that character must realize to actually accept their own wholeness. And it is only, and then Richard is able to arc at the end of the film because he has committed with his daughter to having her win the beauty pageant. He has committed to taking her on this long van ride all the way to this beauty pageant in California so that she can win. And he is, in a way, Richard is living vicariously through Olive. And so what's interesting about the film is that he kind of is the protagonist of the story, and he's definitely the character who arcs, even though Olive is at the forefront, because he is unsuccessful in his own life, and therefore he is living vicariously through his daughter and through his daughter's desires. And so he's believing that if she wins this pageant, then he also gets to be a winner alongside her. But they finally get to the pageant, and in that film, instead of it being a midpoint, this is the climax of the film, and I'll discuss why that's the case. But they get to this pageant, and then suddenly he realizes there's no way Olive is winning. So this egoic desire is being challenged. And so instead of Olive saying, you know what, and then Richard does not want his daughter to go on. Why? Because he knows she's going to lose. And then he knows that, again, his vicarious living through his daughter is going to, hurt him again and just show him once again that he's a loser and all of this. But then once Olive goes on stage and the crowd is booing and she is losing, Richard is given his choice. Is Richard going to allow the public to ridicule his daughter and he's not going to support her, or is he going to support Olive? Is he going to give Olive in this critical moment where she's not a winner? Can he give her love? What she needs, and also what he needs to understand, which is that his value is not in him being seen as a successful person economically or through notoriety. His value is in his ability to show love. And this is what he realizes right in that moment. And he realizes that his daughter doesn't care if he's sold a lot of books. And she doesn't even care about winning this pageant right now. All she is looking for is the love of her father. And he makes the right decision. He gives her that love by dancing with her on stage, by embarrassing himself along with his daughter, and by supporting her no matter what. And that is his need. And the entire film, you could go all the way to the beginning of the film where they're sitting around the kitchen table. In that place, he could already fulfill that need, right? He doesn't have to go anywhere. He can be sitting around that kitchen table and give Olive love. He doesn't have to go on this big, long, external journey all the way to California to sign her up for this pageant and do all of this. He doesn't have to do that. And that's why your need can feel tricky when you're trying to write a need in a story and you're trying to understand what is this relationship between lie and need and these sorts of things. Is that the need is a realization. That realization can come in the form of words and information, knowledge that is integrated into that character that they actually move on. Or it is just a realization. It does not have to exist in words. And that's what's beautiful about life, is life exists outside of words. Life also is not bound to the constant running stream of consciousness word salad that's in your head that you associate with who you are. That's not who you are. You are the awareness behind those thoughts. You are not actually the thoughts. And you are not the labels that those thoughts give to you. If you think of yourself negatively, that is just your stream of consciousness that you are allowing to think negatively about yourself. And you can, of course, change that if you realize that you have the power to change that. And if you realize that you can raise your own vibration by adjusting and shifting and having more control of this stream of consciousness, egoic thought stream that you allow to run amok in your head and allow to give you narratives about who you are. Exactly. Joseph said it right. The stories we tell ourselves aren't ourselves. We are the awareness. We are before that. And so when your now, a character can also have a desire that is not based solely on a lie, and I'll discuss that in a minute. But when you are creating a protagonist who is going to go through an arc, what is going to happen is that they want something that represents their lack of wholeness. They are saying that I am not complete without this thing. And it is important to not just say that your character wants to go on the adventure or build the building or make the money or get the girl. It is important to understand why they chose that particular thing. And it's important to understand why that thing is symbolic of the lack of wholeness that they have created inside of themselves. And so these things are not easy to do just off the top of your head, which is why storytelling and clear storytelling is something that can be difficult to do, because it requires personal awareness. And nobody is perfectly, totally aware and they know themselves so deeply and perfectly. But it is something that you have to pursue if you are going to be a storyteller of any real caliber. And the most important stories are the ones that are autobiographical. Autobiographical is a long, fancy word that just means about yourself. It is a story about yourself. And my time working with writers, I have found over and over again that whether blatantly or in the themes of the story, the best stories that those writers tell are stories that are about themselves. Because we are always projecting ourselves when we're speaking, when we're writing, when we are doing these things. And a screenplay, what I have noticed about working with screenwriters and reading all of these screenplays, and what has been really excellent for me with doing one-on-one coaching and also hosting a writers group, it has been that I have been able to develop a real relationship with the people that are writing the stories, right? I don't get just like stories or screenplays across my desk, read them, send them on, and have no relationship with those people. I'm fortunate enough to where I have had long form relationships over months and sometimes even years with the writers that are writing that screenplay. And what is so fascinating is that I end up being a third-party observer to how obvious their screenplay is about themselves directly or about themes that they are obsessed with that have impacted their life on a deep level and that have had a real impact on who they are and what their identity is. And so, when you are creating a story and you're going to create a character that goes through an arc, the belief that creates their desire comes from what lack they are creating in themselves. And this is really interesting because if you look at the Buddhist teachings, this sort of stuff where it's like, you have to do this internal work, right? You do this internal work, you shed the lies that you believe, and that allows you to become whole. It allows you to sort of raise your own vibration. The Hindus and the Buddhists, they also discuss sort of raising your energy through your chakras and these sorts of things. All what that is meaning is releasing these lies that block your own peace. However, the external world, right, the place we live, it is not really separate from that internal journey. And what's great about a story and what's important about a story is that you need that external world many times to go through that journey. In the same way, if I had not gone and spent my time in Hollywood and spent my time in Los Angeles and working with writers and getting a sense of what my career path was supposed to be and getting a sense of what was actually going on and all of these things, if I didn't go out into the external world and experience those things, it would have been wildly more difficult for me to shed those lies. because I would not have known, I would not have gained the experiential knowledge to say, okay, I can do something different. I don't need to place my identity in these things. I don't need to allow my mind to run amok and create these narratives about who I am supposed to be. And so while, sure, the fortunate few might be very good at sitting on a rock and meditating and lifting all of their lives, the rest of us, we have to experience things. We have to identify our desires and go after them, and then realize what it was that we were creating inside of us that was creating that lack of wholeness. Because really there is no separation between the internal, as it's called, and the external, right? We live in the universe. We live in the one sort of interconnected universe. I went on a hike recently to this beautiful waterfall here in Tennessee, and I went with a friend of mine who is very big into plants and herbs, and he's got like a whole, I don't even know what you would call it, but it's like all these plants sort of in this closed environment in his house. There's a word for it. But what he was kind of showing me about this area and this waterfall was that the trees around this waterfall and the rocks around this waterfall made up the dirt and the sand and these other things. And then it gets recycled back so that new plant life can grow through, and those plants then go through cycles, right? And so he was showing me how the root system, it was crazy. He was showing me because this waterfall had all these exposed roots around it. And he was showing me how not only do the trees send the roots all the way to this waterfall, but the roots get so close to each other that they become connected. And so the trees end up being connected through their root system, like physically. And so he was just saying, like, really, if you think about it, all these trees around here are the same tree because they have grown in an interconnected way to all come and take the water from this waterfall. And so they are physically connected to each other. Long-winded tangent to say that there is no separation between the internal and the external. This is why you look at a story and you have the, quote, internal journey, and then you have the, quote, external journey. Why? Because they happen as mirrors to one another. They are connected to each other. You cannot have an internal change without an external change in my mind. If you are in the same place you have always been, and it's the same level of messy, and it's the same level of internally frustrating or depressing or these sorts of things, it is going to remain that way. There is a relationship between the physical world you are inside and your internal state. They have a relationship to each other. I've talked about this before in certain streams. Like if your room is messy, it is correlated to a certain messiness in your mind. And that's with everything. And that is sort of constantly happening at all times as you are raising or lowering in your own sort of energy and your own frequency there. Now, also, actually, I'm going to just go like this. Yeah. Now, not all characters and not all people go on a journey in a story because of lies. Sometimes they go on a journey because of problems that come up. So you'll see a couple of ways this can work. Many times you'll see me discuss a character who has a want, and this want is based on a lie. and then they encounter some sort of problem slash opportunity. I also talk about this as a portal, and I can discuss more what I mean there. That then sends them on their journey. And this on the story circle would be your 1, your 2, and your 3. And so they have a lie already. And then finally there's a point where they're able to go after that lie, go after that desire out in the world. The portal or the door, the opportunity has opened up for them to actually go after that. And so then they do. Another way that this can happen is you have a character who does not have a particular lie. But then what happens is a problem arises. A problem arises that must be handled, right? A problem, and this happens in many ways. There's a point in the hero's journey. I was reading Campbell's Hero's Journey, and I might read it on stream for you, but where sometimes you're just forced to mature, right? Sometimes in life, the character doesn't have a desire, it doesn't have a lie even, but there's some sort of maturity that must take place, or there's some sort of problem that must simply be solved. And so therefore, they choose to solve the problem, right? Now, and that's your 4 in the story circle. They go out and they choose to solve that problem. Now, sometimes, depending on their level of maturity, the problem that arises can also give them certain small lies. So, for example, in The Lord of the Rings with Frodo, another example I use a lot, in The Lord of the Rings, Frodo doesn't necessarily have a lie, and he does not want to go on the adventure. If you watch the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings series, he even tells Bilbo when they get to Rivendell, the place of the elves, he tells his uncle that, I'm not like you. I didn't want to go on an adventure, and my adventure turned out to be very different. But also within that was his lie, which is that he doesn't have to go all the way with this adventure that has been placed upon him. Frodo believes that all he needs to do is take the ring to, at first, the edge of the Shire and give it to Gandalf, and then after that, Rivendell. And each time he doesn't actually see just how big the adventure is that he is on. And that's okay. And that's a different kind of lie, because he continues to do what he needs to do. But the point is, if your character, it's very important to understand what is setting your story off. Because if you don't understand whether you're telling a story about a character that has an arc, or you're telling a story about a character that is whole and then goes out to solve a problem, if you don't know which one you're doing, then it can cause you some difficulty and cause certain rewriting and this sort of thing. But it's usually very easy to figure out what's what, in the sense of, does your character start off with some sort of desire? Or are they starting off in a place of peace, in a place of, they're Frodo, in a place of innocence, or in a place of being the Buddha, right? Where they do not have a particular desire, where they are whole on a certain way. And also on that note, you will usually see when a character must go off on a journey and they don't necessarily have a lie, they're not usually all whole, because that would make them more of a mentor character, right? They usually have some sort of innocence, some sort of lack of awareness of the reality of the world they are in. And through this journey, they realize how dangerous or how difficult the world can be, and that becomes their arc. Their arc is going from a state of total innocence about reality to a more matured position, understanding what actually is out there, understanding the dangers and the difficulties and the frustrations that can be out in the world. And, there can be certain combinations of these things. And because of that, sometimes it can just be hard to get clear in your story. And as well, multiple characters can go through these arcs where you don't necessarily just have one character that's going on an arc. This is another thing that and I think this has been something that has stopped me up because of my seeing myself as like this ultimate protagonist in my real life for so long, is that all characters in your story, they can make important choices and they can be an important part of the drama, even though there are usually central characters. But every character is part of the story because the story is this unified thing that's going on. It is not just a single character's journey. It is all of these people are all intricately a part of this larger journey that's taking place. And you have to understand that, because if you don't, then you'll end up like how I have been, which is one character has to do everything. And that is a projection of mine that I have carried forward. However, you will usually have central characters either way, but this is also why it's very important to me that you think of your story as that you are the sort of God of this story, in the sense that you are the principal architect of it. And you have this meaningful journey that's taking place, and it is not a wandering. It is not a total meandering like some would lead you to believe. And I would also argue so far as to say that, like, you might be able to start writing a story by the seat of your pants, right? Pantsing, as it's called. But a story is something that needs to be architected at some level. And you can do that by writing and rewriting multiple times. Or you can do that by outlining and seeing through an outline how you want a story to go, and then start writing and then use that process. But no matter what, the story is architected. It is built, it is constructed because it is meaningful. And in the same way, I also believe that life itself works that way. And that's why a story is meaningful. And that's why you as a single person can architect the story of multiple characters who all have their place. I believe that exact same thing is happening on the world stage as we speak. And I know that's a bold claim to make. And some might even say an anti-scientific claim or what have you. But I think we are in a fundamentally meaningful place, fundamentally meaningful universe, where everyone sort of has their space and role and element to play. Which is why if you look at the end of Tolkien's story, you look at the end of The Lord of the Rings, you see that Gollum, when we get to that climax, watch my video on how to write a perfect climax if you haven't seen. When we get to that climax, Frodo can't put the ring in the fire. And Gollum becomes necessary for good to win the day. Gollum becomes a necessary agent, even though he is not a totally good character, right? Even though he is a gray character and he has been eaten by the ring and his energy has been taken by the ring in many ways, he is still important for the story. He is still necessary for the overall plan to happen, for the architected journey to take place. And so if you think about that moment that happens at the end of The Lord of the Rings, in many ways you could say that you can trace the whole thing back to say all these things happened even before Frodo left the Shire to take the ring to Mordor. All of this was orchestrated. Because how else could it perfectly go to where Gollum was there at the right time, where Frodo was there, and to where Gollum could do what he needed to do to take Frodo's finger off, to take the ring from him, and ultimately to have the ring go into the fire. And so I don't particularly believe that, like the Catholic Church has all the answers about what what the true religion is supposed to be. I believe we are in a meaningful story. That we are in the story of humanity, or we are in the story of time, if you want to call it that. And through that, we have cycles. We go through cycles just like stories do. We even go through a cycle every year, right? I touched on this a little bit in a previous stream, but if you take a story circle like this, you could say that a story circle also shows us the journey of the sun, which might be the most important circle that exists, where we have spring here, and you have the March solstice over here, you have summer here, you have I forget what the solstice is over here. Is it June or something? I don't remember. But the summer solstice, or no, the summer solstice is here, right? Like June. And then you get the autumn, you get fall, and then you get winter, right? This is the journey of the sun, right? And each year, the sun has its midpoint, has its darkest point, right? The dead of winter down here, right? When the sun is dead, the sun is far away from us, and we get our highest point, right? Where we get, sort of the climax of the sun up here. And over in our meaningful world, we have these phases. And so yeah, that's what I wanted to start off today, share with you guys. So just to recap here, if your character believes a lie, like the difficulty, this is what I would say. The difficulty about understanding a character's lie comes in understanding your own lies. The most important story that you're going to tell will be a story of you identifying a lie and the journey it took for you to make the change. And if you're someone that says, oh, well, I don't have any lies, well, you have some work to do. Very likely. Because we all end up with lies, and many of those lies start when we're very young and start in our childhood. And start when we are not, that's the whole element of awareness and how it becomes difficult sometimes to be aware of ourselves because of things that we wanted to suppress or wanted to keep hidden. And so, yes, Joseph, the writer must solve his own lies. It is his own imperfect understanding. He must see himself through his stories. That is what a writer is doing. And so when you have, I think my landlord is outside. When you have a story and you have ideas about that story, and you don't know, let's say you don't know. I don't know what my lies are. I don't know what my story is about. I don't know any of this. That's totally okay. Write a first draft and pants it. Just write the thing. Because when you do, then you have something to analyze. You have something to say, okay, well, let me try to separate myself from this character for a minute, because 9 times out of 10, that protagonist in your story is going to be you. It's very hard to escape that truth, but the character is going to be you. And so what did they do? And what did they do that you might say is their lie, right? Can you look and see the thing? Can you try to separate yourself for a moment and say, what is the lie this character is holding? It's hard to do. It's also why writing partners can be valuable, especially writing partners that are committed to seeing story in for what it really is, which is this conscious journey through your own self that you're going through. The Missing Pickle asks, how do you center your own life into a story when one's life is long and complicated and tricky? Very good question. It's tough to do. You have, what I think, this is why finding something that happened, that you did or that happened to you in the external world is the best place to start. You have seen me discuss how sometimes I've said, I don't like flashbacks, or I don't like dream sequences, or these sorts of things. The reason I have said that, I'm gonna soften my view on that here and say that I don't totally and vehemently hate those things. What I'm trying to say is you need to find the external events that you can put in a line to create the basic backbone of your story. So in the same way, that's what I would do in your own life. What events, was there a terrible 6-month period of your life where a lot of stuff happened and you learned a lot? Okay, start there. And then if that 6-month period of your life, let's say related to what happened to you when you were 6 years old, okay, great. Then you can find ways to flash back to those moments. You can find ways to understand how those things make up the ghost of your character, or make up the ghost of you, that baggage that you have not let go. All of that is valid. But you first and foremost, you need to find something that you could make a story, that you could put a camera on, right? That's why I also really like the medium of film, TV, the medium of audiovisual storytelling, whether that's web series or short films or whatever it might be, because it forces you to create an event, right? It forces you to create something that you are actually putting a camera on and say, okay, this is about an event, and now I can come in and see what the lie of my character is. And now I can come in and see what the ghost was that this character needed to deal with, that happened to them when they were 10, that they didn't realize until they were 28, and now they're making this change, right? That's what I'm saying. You have to be able to get, yes, practical. You have to make it practical. You have to practically start somewhere. And so you're totally right. One's life is long and complicated, and it's even longer and more complicated with your dreams and your constant stream of thoughts and all of these things. So start with an event and build from there. Stories are ultimately a process of becoming more self-aware. That is their purpose. All right. Questions. If you guys have any questions for me today, definitely throw them in the YouTube chat. You can also join the Discord. The Discord should be linked below this live stream if I did it all correctly in the beginning. I hope I did. Joseph asked, how is the lie related to the want? Can you be more specific? In the sense of in this sense, I would say that the lie is the belief that creates the want, whether conscious or unconscious. So I want to be a successful filmmaker, and I'm going to do everything I can to be a successful filmmaker. Why? I guess the best way to connect the want and the lie is to ask the question, why? Why does your character want that want? If you know why they want the want, that why should create the lie they believe. All right, I will wait. How do you know if it's truth or a lie? That is a good question, Corey. The lie. I mean, this is gonna get pretty esoteric, but there is objective truth. I would say the lie is a mentally created projection of who you are, right? So the lie, so if you have a outward desire of like, I want to be a millionaire, I need to be this, I need to be that. And it's like, why? Well, because that external thing will make me whole. So anything that you believe that is external outside of you that's going to make you whole, that is a lie. The truth is that you are whole right now. You are whole, you are lovable, you are accepted. If you allow yourself to be loved and be accepted. Stevenson said, Tyler, will all of my live streams start at 4 p.m. now? I am going to do my best to stream weekdays. What time, the actual time will probably jump around. But do you guys like this time better rather than some of the morning streams? Now that I'm on the East Coast, I feel like more evening streams are making more sense. So essentially leaving the lie is them automatically pursuing their truth. It can be. Usually they will. So the lie and the truth are attached to one another, right? It's a duality. So like a specific lie comes with its truth, right? So if you're saying, you know, with Richard in Little Miss Sunshine, he needs to, my lie is that like his lie is I need to be seen as a winner to be loved. So what happens is, through his daughter mirroring that same lie in Little Miss Sunshine, he realizes that that's a lie and that the truth is just the opposite, right? I don't need to be seen as a winner to be loved. It is the opposite. So like truths and lies, they are like connected in that way, right? It's like just how light is connected to dark. When you have a philosophical conflict, it's a binary, right? It's like a 1 or it's a 0. They are connected. They're yin and they're yang, right? It's not separate. It's like two pieces of the same side, which is also why we all naturally have to shed lies and go through these arcs, because it is natural. It is part of nature itself. Ali says, how do you know you have written enough and it's time to edit the first draft? It's time to end the first draft and start the ending. Or start the editing, excuse me. How do you know you have written enough and it's time to end the first draft and start the editing? Well, ideally, your story ends in a climax, first and foremost. And if you are writing a screenplay, ideally it's between 90 and 120 pages. So just super basic. Here, I'm going to get away from story circles for just a minute and get even simpler with you guys about how you might structure your stories. So here we go. First, I talked about this where like there's this duality, and essentially what's going to happen in a story. Like no matter what, you're going to have two sides like this, right? You're going to have the light side and you're going to have the dark side of your, this would be like truth and lie. This is essentially like when your character goes out on this journey and they go down, they're pursuing that lie, you're going to have this dark midpoint, right? And then in the end of your story, when you get to the final end, you're going to have this like light climax. And it might not even be light, but it's like you have a climax. So these are both climaxes, right? We got a climax here and we got a climax here, right? So bare minimum, you need to create 2 climaxes in your story. Bare minimum, right? The darkest point where everything goes wrong and the point where your character finally makes it through and wins in the end, right? Because again, a story is a duality, right? If you're going to send your character all the way to the top, right? Victory in the end, we need to send them to that dark low point in the bottom because it is a yin and a yang. Now, I discussed that choices, aka decisions, are the function of how a story actually moves forward, right? This is how drama works, how a choice moves forward. So it would essentially work like, so you've got like, you're gonna have some sort of problem and a choice. So then problem arises. Then you're going to have the debate, right? This is where characters are talking about what to do about the problem. You're going to have some sort of pressure, right? The pressure is rising on this choice, like problem, and you could also say choice presented here. What is going to happen? The pressure, and then ultimately like the decision or the action happens at the end, right? And then there's 2 sides in this, right? You're going to either go this way or this way, and you're going to have characters that are battling back and forth. Now, a climax is a big choice. So you need 2 big choices minimum, right? So we're going to have like this, right? Big final choice. Big midpoint choice. Right? And then usually a big loss here too. And then all your little scenes in here, all through, are going to be your characters making choices. Watch my choice video and my climax video that are up on the channel to get more clarity on this. But all you need to do is, like, bare minimum, you need these 2 big choices. To know that you have written enough, Ali, or to say that you've gotten far enough, right? And if this is a screenplay, you want to be between like 90 and 120 pages. Then there's also 2 more, or there's 4 acts in a screenplay. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then each act has its own little climax. And so you're going to have another big choice, big climax here, another big choice climax here. But these are going to be smaller than these 2, right? These are your big boys. These are your smaller climaxes. But right to those, right? So you'll kind of go, whoa, boom, whoa, boom. Oh, shoot, everything is so totally terrible. Oh my gosh, boom. Okay, maybe we're making it. Oh no, we lost everything. Oh wait, we won, right? Like if I was going to like plot out the feel of the drama, it would look something like that, right? This is also why, like, remember when I was looking at the spring, summer, fall, winter, right? This is your winter. Why? Because you just had the horrible midpoint where everything went wrong, right? And so this is the setup, more of the setup of the story, or your setup acts, no, 2 is a climactic act, but you have kind of this build up and then the big loss, and then that's how like you can get that second push, because you have that drop off and you have that push off there. Ray asks, what do you think about Sid Field's screenplay, The Fundamentals of Screenwriting, a step-by-step guide? I do know the book. It's very simple. I would say that. I don't think Sid Field is really giving you that deep, deep wisdom. It's a very simple book. Like, he's saying a story has a beginning, middle, and end. It's like, thanks, Sid. Thanks. Yes, in The Dark Knight, Rachel dies right here, right? Rachel dies here, and then boom. And then not only does Rachel die here in The Dark Knight, Rachel dies at the midpoint, but then also this act is about Harvey becoming Two-Face. And that's important to remember here, because this act is like Rachel dies, horrible thing, and then it just gets worse, right? Joker pushes Harvey to becoming Two-Face in Act 3 of 4 of The Dark Knight. So that's why, it's like, boom, the big midpoint smack in the face climactic thing is that Rachel dies, and then Harvey becomes Two-Face through that third act, and it's like, man, can we ever win? And then we go into the final choice. Or we go into Act 4. How about Save the Cat? I haven't taken a look at Save the Cat for a long time, but here's what I would say. Like, Hollywood has not been incentivized to tell you all the truth. They have been incentivized to keep their little guilds and to keep their little... And so because of that, it means that their people, their gurus and stuff, have not always given you like the best material possible. Save the Cat has good beats for a screenplay sometimes. I have not taken a look at the book in a long time because I just haven't, and it has not really been necessary to me to take a look at it. So, and honestly, like, rather than looking at Save the Cat, if you can just understand the function of a story circle, it makes your life so much easier. That's what I think. So if you want to have a quick story circle understanding from the, let me just, as simple as I possibly can. Also, I'm working on videos that will eventually come to this channel. Yeah. I've got a whole big, like, I got stuff to do. I got stuff to make, and I have for a while, and I have been not here, but why choices? Scenario Lumières et Mécaniques asks. Why choices? Because that's the function of everything. Oh man, why choices? Ooh. Because the foundation of the world is not physical fighting. It is conscious choice. Choice defines everything. Choice defines your life. Choice defines how you end up. Choice defines your everyday. It is becoming conscious of the choices that you are making on a daily basis that changes your life. It is becoming conscious of the choices that you make in a particular conflict. That is how that conflict is handled. Choice defines our very existence. For every action is just one side of choice. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Meaning what? Meaning every action is a choice. I chose to come back streaming on this day. I chose to get a green screen. I chose to do all of the things. I chose to do all of these things. Choices are the foundation of your entire human existence, and it's the foundation of philosophy and understanding. Every time you do something, you are not doing something else, right? So that's why choices. Choices are the function of story. Choices are the function of story. Hear me when I say this. If you don't understand a choice, you do not understand story. If you're only writing characters that take actions without creating any meaning behind that action, therefore creating a choice, you do not understand story. Watch my video on choices. It's the second latest video, or third latest, that's up on my channel right now. You must understand choices if you are going to understand story. That is where drama is, right? A dilemma is in choices. When Simba is out in the wilderness and I forget the girl lion's name, when she comes and finds him and tells him to come back to the kingdom, come back to Pride Rock, she's opening a choice. She's giving him a potential choice. She's arguing for an action. And Simba says, I don't want to go. Why? Because he's arguing the other side of the choice. Dialogue is characters debating a choice. And the fact that Sid Field doesn't say that page 1 of his book is part of the reason that his book sucks. Nala. Thank you, Tom. Can't forget my Lion Queen. I thought I saw... JCR. What's up, JCR? I would also say, I would recommend you watch the stream recording after it's over. If you guys catch the stream late, you can always go to the live tab on my channel and see all of the recordings there. Zav says, if my character experiences a big loss in the midpoint of the season, is it right for them to have a big loss again in the finale? So how it would work, let's say this is your midpoint here, right? This is your midpoint. Your midpoint loss is going to last a while, but your climactic loss or your climactic 6 is going to be a moment, right? So when we have our big loss at the midpoint, and then we have essentially gone up, we're making it, boom, everything went wrong. Oh my gosh, everything has just gone wrong. Oh, we're trying to make, right? Multiple episodes are now in this post big loss, right? And that big loss might be a character death. That's one of the easiest to do. It might be some sort of, imprisonment, like a loss of the goal. All sorts of things can happen. Some sort of like character loss is usually the easiest. It can also be just like a total destruction of the goal, right? Like your whole, like the money all burns or something. everything is gone. All your characters, like essentially progress totally destroyed is what you would find a lot of the time in this midpoint. And then when you get to your finale over here, it's going to be like, you're going to have this kind of thing where, okay, we're going. Oh no. But then you have this shoot back up, right? So we have this big loss in the moment, but then your character makes the climactic choice and is able to win the day. That's what happens. That's kind of how that works. So that's why, and this is the same, like this is all stories, right? This is a feature. This is a TV season. This is a short film if you wanted to do that. Like, this is a novel, right? You can think of it in these ways, and you can try to get away from this and be like, oh, well, I'm going to do it another way. But then I would say, what other way though? The only other way is just this is the best way to build strong dramatic tension, right? Because we're going up to this goal and we want to have that sense of momentum. And then we have the big loss, and this big loss allows us to then create that crazy finale at the end. Without that midpoint loss, you don't get the strength of the finale. Because let's say there is no midpoint loss and they just kind of go like this. Well, now we're just getting bored, right? It's just not interesting. And then, oh, they won. Great. It's like, but we spent the whole second half of the season way up here. So, or you could, make them lose at the end. That would be a way to do it. But you have to do, it has to be mirrored, right? So if the midpoint is a win, the climax is going to be a loss. If the midpoint is a loss, the climax is going to be a win. Why? Because it's yin yang. It's plus minus. It's like my terrible yin yang symbol. It's like if you want to create drama, it means that you have to go as hard as you can emotionally and ideally externally and philosophically in both directions. That's how you create this situation. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call it done there. I think we covered a lot of good stuff today. I will be back tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure when. I need to check my schedule. But I will be streaming back tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. Continue to answer questions. I think it will be best for me to try and keep these streams around like an hour and a half. Because I feel like when they, I don't want them to be a Joe Rogan episode, I don't want them to go on and on and on and on. And I feel like it helps keep some things fresh. Squally says, wait, I'm waiting. I'll give you a second. What's going on? What'll be the topic for tomorrow? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm working on this series right now of course videos. And so whatever seems to spark my mind from that, should get it. You like the backdrop? I'm glad you like it. What did they say? What they said? Nah, I prefer the longer streams. Okay. Well, I'll keep that in mind. I'll have to go back and forth. Squally says, how can you make a character with a strong belief not sound preachy? By not putting their belief in the dialogue, but putting their belief in actions. And that's very hard to do. Make your character take actions that express their belief rather than walking around in dialogue being preachy to other characters. That is the first step. 10-hour stream. Well, if I'm going to do longer streams, you guys have to join the Discord and come in and talk to me. Because I'm the most interested when you guys come in and talk to me and I can hear your guys' voices and we can get more into the spirit of your question, because that is, that's the best. Josh just put it in the chat. Join the Discord there. Thank you, Josh. I will see you all tomorrow. Be well.